Doesn't mean it can't be part of Islam, but we can't say with absolute certainty that it comes from the faith. This, interestingly enough, is one of his most famous statements, that anyone who raises 2 orphan girls, takes good care of them until they become adults, will be with me in paradise like this. Okay, who is this man Muhammad anyway? So we said in 570 AD, a man is born in the Arabian Peninsula in the city of Mecca named Muhammad. His name in Arabic basically means the praiseworthy, or the most praised. It can also be shortened to Ahmed. So, this particular person, peace be upon him, became an orphan very early on. By the age of 6, both his mother and his father had died. And he began to be a goat and shepherd, herder, at a certain point in his teenage life for the people of Mecca. By the age of 25, he'd earned a pretty good reputation amongst his people. He was known as, in Arabic, as-sadiq al-amin. That means the trustworthy and the honest. Meaning out of all the people in our city of Mecca, this guy seems to be the most trustworthy. How do we know that? What's the evidence of this? Well, the people of Quraysh, the tribe that managed and oversaw Mecca and the pilgrimage that took place there, they used to use his house as a bank. That means that when they would go on merchant trips to Syria and Yemen, they would deposit their goods in his home. Because they knew that when they came back, he was going to be the kind of person who would give it back to them. He would not be treacherous with their wealth. Now, this caught the attention of a wealthy businesswoman named Khadija, who at that time was a widow. She asked the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, who at this point is not a prophet, to go and take some of her merchandise to Syria, do some business, and she would see how well he did. Well, he did, in fact, very well. He came back and made her more money than she'd ever made, and she knew basically this man had not been treacherous with her goods. So she did what any good woman does when you find a good man. She proposed to him. So the Prophet Muhammad accepted the proposal at the age of 25 and Khadija at the age of 40. Prophet Muhammad's first wife, his boss. So they would have several children. Now, by the age of 40, the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, became very distraught with the situation of his city of Mecca. You see, Mecca had something very special in it. This building called the Kaaba. According to Arab tradition, Abraham and Ishmael had built this building several thousand years earlier as a temple honoring the creator of the universe, the God of Abraham. However, at some point in history, without any new messenger coming to the Arab people, they began to rationalize that, we really can't have a direct relationship with God. You see, God is so holy, and we're so bad, and we're so sinful, that we need to basically go through pious and righteous people of the past. And to make it easy for us to intercede with these wonderful people from before us, we'll make a statue or picture of them so that we can more easily make a connection with them. And then these righteous, pious idols will take our prayers to God. And so that's what they did. By the time the Prophet Muhammad was born, there's 360 of these idols in the Kaaba, a building that was originally for the transcendent, eternal creator of the universe, who's not like anything in the heavens, earth, or in the sea. Now it's full of statues. So, not only that, but idolatry is big business when you're in the middle of nowhere. See, I've actually been to the Arabian Peninsula, and there's really not a lot there other than palm trees and, of course, perfume. But there's no manufacturing, there's not a lot of, you could say, commerce and business going on in other aspects. So what they would do is basically say, look, you bring your idol to us, and you can come pilgrimage here every year. And when you come, you'll bring your goods and do business with us. Not only that, but widows, orphans, slaves, all of the so-called lower classes of society at that time in history are basically persecuted. They have no rights, especially women. Khadija would be a clear outlier for the women at that time in history. So, what happens next? The Prophet Muhammad leaves his people. He does not worship idols. He's not interested in the way they treat people. In fact, he treats people the opposite way. So, how does he become a messenger of God? Story number 2. This comes from the Hadith tradition. One night in a cave outside of Mecca, the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, is meditating on his Lord. And he hears a voice cry out to him in the darkness, "Iqra." Now, Iqra is a word in Arabic which can mean 2 different things at that time in history. Either A, read, right, like read me something off a sheet of paper, or recite me some poetry. You see, at that time in history, the Arabic language was like Chaucer is for English, or Shakespeare, very high level. However, he was not known as a poet, and he certainly wasn't known as someone who could read and write. So he said, "Ma ana biqari," I don't know how to read or recite. And then he felt a squeeze around his body. Next, the voice cries out again to him, "Iqra," read, recite. "Ma ana biqari," I don't know how to read and recite, and a squeeze around his body. And then again, but this time a little more information. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Iqra bismi rabbika alladhi khalaq. In the name of God, the most gracious, the most merciful. Read in the name of your Lord who created. خَلَقَ الْإِنسَانَ مِنْ عَلَقٍ, who created mankind from a clinging clot of blood in his mother's womb. اقْرَأْ وَرَبُّكَ الْأَكْرَمُ, read, and your Lord is most generous. الَّذِي عَلَّمَ بِالْقَلَمِ, who taught mankind the use of the pen. عَلَّمَ الْإِنسَانَ مَا لَمْ يَعْلَمْ, taught mankind that which it did not know before. And thus the first 5 verses of the Quran are revealed to the now prophet Muhammad, who goes to his people for the next 13 years in his city of Mecca with one beautiful message. What is that message? La ilaha illallah. In other words, he would go into the marketplace and he would say, Ya ayyuhan nas, O people, all of you, every human being, Qulu la ilaha illallah tuflihu. Say that there is nothing worthy of worship, no God except the one true God of Abraham, and you'll succeed. In other words, all of these things, these material things that you've created, these unnecessary barriers you've put between yourself and God, they're not real. They don't exist. You have only made them as an unsanctioned, unofficial barrier to you and God. You don't need them. Get rid of them. Worship the Creator, just like your father Abraham. Now, makes sense. It was not an irrational idea, but it was bad for business. Very bad for business. You see, the Quraysh, they knew that he was an honest man. They made a lot of accusations to defame him. They said, oh, well, he's possessed by the devil. Well, that's very interesting. The Quran, as we've already heard, does not paint a very good picture of the devil. In fact, later on in the book, you find that he's outcast from paradise. He's ar-rajim. He is the one who wants to drag every human being into hell with him, which is his inevitable destination. He is man's open and clear enemy. In fact, Muslims don't recite from the Quran, which you've already learned, without seeking refuge from the devil with God. So that didn't fly for very long. Then they said, okay, well, he's a liar. Okay? But that really wasn't his reputation until that point. He was a sadiq al-amin, the trustworthy and the honest. So, what was more proof of it? Well, when they came to him at one point to try to convince him to stop preaching this message, they said, look, we think you're lying. We know what you want. We're going to make you our leader, okay? Because we know you really want power. Number 2, we're going to make you the richest person among us. We know you want money. And finally, like all men, we're going to give you the most beautiful women amongst us because we know that's what you really want. Just stop preaching this message. Stop telling us to worship God. Let us worship our idols, please. How does he respond at a persecuted time in history? I don't care if you give me the sun in my right hand or the moon in my left. I'm never going to stop preaching this. So that lying thing didn't fly very long. So maybe they said, okay, well, he's crazy. Well, that really didn't fit his description. You see, if he's crazy, why were you depositing your goods in his house? Does craziness run in his family? Do crazy people recite amazing Arabic literature to you? Do they raise functioning families? Do they maintain functioning marriages? Do they maintain functioning teaching activities? Do they become politicians? Well, that one might be true. However, are they good at all of these things? No, we know where most mentally ill people are, right? Usually locked up somewhere. So none of the accusations flew. So that didn't stop them. They persecuted him, and they persecuted him, and they persecuted him, until the few followers that he did have during that 13-year period were either running away to other places to live, escaping persecution, killed or tortured, or sanctioned, to the point where they were eating leaves off the trees to survive. Finally, after the Prophet Muhammad's life comes under threat, he's given the permission to leave Mecca and go to an oasis in the north full of Jewish people and pagan Arabs who had accepted the faith of Islam and pagan Arabs who had not, called Medina. And this is the last 10 years of his life. Now, the persecution didn't stop there, but this is where we start to see Islam as not a set of beliefs, but a set of beliefs followed up with actions start to take shape. You see, in Medina, the Muslims had freedom to practice their religion without persecution. So at that time, that's where we start to see what are called the pillars of Islam emerge, the skeleton of Islamic practice. The first pillar of Islam is two statements. You see, when I wanted to accept the religion of Islam approximately 7.5 years ago, I had to make a public declaration of faith, okay? It's like the easiest conversion to any religion possible. I had to say the following statement, Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah. I testify that there is no God except the one true God. Wa ashhadu anna Muhammad Rasulullah. And I testify that Muhammad is God's final messenger. Not the only messenger, but the final. Once I said that statement and I believed it, I was part of the largest brotherhood and sisterhood on earth. That was it. That's what made me and continues to make me and anyone else who says that a Muslim. That's it. However, this testimony is just pillar one. Once you make it,